I believe there's a strict, clear agenda. If you read into the old lines of Helena or Alice Bailey or David Spangler, Paul Von Ward, all these other guys, Benjamin Grimm, so forth, and some of the older Luciferians, their agenda is very clear. They know that there's going to be a great cleansing in order to bring about a whole new age, a whole new spiritual age. It's about a spiritual evolution.
And it's a time in which the powers of the universe are going to enlighten mankind, whether they're ready or not.
Do you mean an external influence? Is something I absolutely, at a deep level, I know it.
While many today in the truth movement believe that the momentum is fighting against the New World Order, and even winning, they are in fact being led by such people as Michael Tsarion, Jordan Maxwell and David Icke, who they themselves are adherents to New Age doctrines. But while these men expose some truth in regard to political corruption, they steer in the direction of the real or spiritual New World Order. The most striking example of this is the influence of Blavatsky on Michael Tsarion and Jordan Maxwell.
Gentlemen, have you ever heard or read Mrs. Blavatsky? She's
Helena Petrovna Blavatsky?
Right.
Yes, I have all of her works.
You have?
Yes.
Well, that's why. Yes.
I think her best work was Isis Unveiled, Part 2, which is theology.
Right.
Science. And that was an exceptional work. I think that Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, the Russian mystic, was a very wise and perceptive lady, and she had some very profound knowledge, obviously, and her academic achievements were extraordinary, and so I have a very high respect for the work of Helena Blavatsky.
Madame Blavatsky, one of the greatest scholars the world has ever known, writes in this way. She says, the appellation Satan in Hebrew belongs by right to the first and cruelest adversary of all other gods, Jehovah, not in the serpent which spoke only words of sympathy and wisdom.
In this quote, it's clear that Tsarion agrees with Blavatsky, the greatest scholar the world has ever known, that what we call God should be called Satan, and the serpent is actually our good friend. I just want to show you how by any definition, Tsarion is a Luciferian, regardless of what he tells you that minute that the serpent represents.
We're being brought into a new world that you are not going to recognize in the next 20 to 50 years.
And one great example of the way this works I came across, which the beings, which we call the guys, told us about.
You call them the guys?
The guys, yeah. It's not
like the beings like
Tarot,
Rakoski.
And yeah, that's right. Now
he was Jesus' father, Rakoski.
That's right.
And Merlin as well.
Part of him was, yeah. That's right. Aspects.
Now, although there's a lot to talk about from that clip, the thing that I want to focus in on is the being's name, Rakoski. In Theosophy, Rakoski is one of the ascended masters. These are the beings that are supposedly so evolved that they have transcended the physical realm, and now they are helping humanity pass through a coming age of enlightenment. Rakoski was a particular ascended master that Alice Bailey wrote extensively about. It is especially significant that Icke calls him the Lord of all creation, and elsewhere, as we will see, the Lord of civilization, and says that he is, quote, directly responsible for the changes the earth will undergo, because these are absolutely clear examples that he is referring to the same ascended master that Alice Bailey made prominent, as she gave him those exact titles and said that his task was to establish the new civilization of the age of Aquarius.
Jordan Maxwell has stated that he has been influenced not only by Blavatsky, but also by Manly Palmer Hall, the 33rd degree Freemason.
I'd like to pay tribute to three people who have influenced my life greatly. Probably the most impressive man I have ever personally known and has impacted my life was Mr. Manly Palmer Hall. Manly P. Hall, if you do not know, is one of the most brilliant spiritual men that I have ever even read about. And so I want to pay tribute to Mr. Hall.
They're showing from their primary documents what they are trying to do. And here in this document, Manly Palmer Hall tells us that a secret governing body controls the globe, not the various religious governing bodies that pretend to rule. That's what I was trying to tell you with that diagram with the black circle in the middle of the pie. And who is Manly P. Hall? Manly P. Hall was a Grand Master in the Illuminati, and he was also a Grand Master in Freemasonry. And here is the Scottish Rite Journal's obituary of him, illustrious Manly Palmer Hall, often called Masonry's greatest philosopher.
They were to deny that Lucifer was their god whenever an outsider was smart enough to break through all of the secrets and figure it out. Well, of course, folks, they're sworn to secrecy. They have to deny anything about the true secrets of their order. I mean, what kind of logic is this? That's plain as the nose in your face. You must understand that when you ask a Mason a question about Freemasonry, he's going to tell you a lie because he is sworn to secrecy, and he is sworn by blood oaths. And I know that by the time they've reached the 32nd degree, they've taken at least 32 different oaths swearing them to secrecy.
Manly P. Hall, if you do not know, was one of the most brilliant spiritual men that I have ever even read about. And so I want to pay tribute to Mr. Hall.
And who is Manly P. Hall? Manly P. Hall was a Grand Master in the Illuminati.
What is even more disturbing is when one considers the following quote from Manly Palmer Hall's book, America's Assignment with Destiny. Genuine esoteric associations always required that disciples prepared themselves for careers of practical service. The student was expected to attain to a state of unusual skill or proficiency in some branch of learning. He was then to practice this profession or craft as a means of extending his sphere of constructive influence. He was to teach through example, enriching his chosen vocation with the overtones of enlightened religious philosophy, thus gradually creating a significant zone of influence. He was available for whatever task the keepers of the great plan required. Practical ends can only be achieved by practical means, and the agents of the universal reformation must be sufficient for every emergency. Alice Bailey was a disciple of the Luciferian theosophist H.P. Blavatsky. She praised Blavatsky in the acknowledgement page of her work, A Treatise on Cosmic Fire, when she stated that the book was, quote, dedicated with gratitude to Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, that great disciple who lighted her in the East and brought the light to Europe and America in 1875, unquote. Alice Bailey never claimed to write any of her 24 books, but rather that the Tibetan spirit guide Chual Kul wrote them. In other words, Bailey was channeling the spirit. Foster Bailey, Alice Ann Bailey's husband, stated in his book, Running God's Plan, that modern esotericism is a new phenomenon in the Western world, pioneered by the Tibetan teacher Chual Kul, working with H.P. Blavatsky. Again, this time working with Alice Ann Bailey, the same master teacher has provided the interim teaching needed for conscious entry into the new Aquarian age. The study of this new teaching in the books published under the name of Alice Bailey is producing a revival of esotericism and a new technique for self-development, this time with the selfless goal of world service. Alice Bailey founded the Lucifer Publishing Company in 1920, but the name changed to Lucius Trust in 1922. Terry Mellinson from ConspiracyArchive.com stated the following on how Lucius Trust is run. Lucius Trust is run through an international board of trustees, whose membership is said to have included John D. Rockefeller, Norman Cousins, Robert S. McNamara, Thomas Watson Jr., IBN former U.S. Ambassador to Moscow, Henry Clausen, Grand Commander of the Supreme Council 33rd Degree, Southern District, Scottish Rite, and Henry Kissinger. This would then tie Bailey's influential occult organization into the international conspiracy of elitists, including the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergs, and the Trilateral Commission. Many of these people are involved in tax-exempt foundations. These foundations have massively altered life in the United States over the last few decades. The following gives an example of how these men and these organizations are trying to alter education in the United States and through many other similar organizations in other countries around the world.
The story you are about to hear represents a missing piece in the puzzle of modern history. Without this knowledge, many contemporary events are simply beyond understanding. You are about to hear a man tell you that the major tax-exempt foundations of this land, since at least 1945, have been operating to promote a hidden agenda. And that agenda has nothing to do with the surface appearance of charity, good works, or philanthropy. The man who tells this story is none other than Mr. Norman Dodd, who in 1954 was the staff director of the Congressional Special Committee to investigate tax-exempt foundations, sometimes referred to as the Reese Committee, in recognition of its chairman, Congressman Carroll Reese. Mr. Dodd, you have spoken before about some interesting things that were discovered by Catherine Casey at the Carnegie Endowment. Can you tell us that story?
Yes, I'm glad to, Mr. Griffin. This experience that you have just referred to came about in response to a letter which I had written to the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, asking certain questions and gathering certain information. And on the arrival of that letter, Dr. Johnson, who was then president of the Carnegie Endowment, telephoned me and said, did I ever come up to New York? And I said, yes, I did, more or less each weekend. And he said, well, when you're next here, will you drop in and see us? Which I did. And again, on arrival at the office of the endowment, I found myself in the presence of Dr. Joseph Johnson, the president, who was a successor to Alger Hiss, two vice presidents, and their own counsel, a partner in the firm of Sullivan and Cromwell. And Dr. Johnson said, after, again, amenities, Mr. Dodd, we have your letter. We can answer all those questions, but it'd be a great deal of trouble. And we have a counter-suggestion. And our counter-suggestion is that if you can spare a member of your staff for 2 weeks and send that member up to New York, we will give to that member a room in the library and the minute books of this foundation since its inception. And we think that whatever you want to find out or the Congress wants to find out will be obvious from those minutes. What could possibly be wrong with foundations? They do so much good. Well, in the face of that sincere conviction of Catherine's, I went out of my way not to prejudice her in any way. But I did explain to her that she couldn't possibly cover 50 years of handwritten minutes in 2 weeks. So she would have to do what we call spot reading. And I blocked out certain periods of time to concentrate on. And off she went to New York. She came back at the end of 2 weeks with the following in the way of, on dictaphone belts. We are now at the year 1908, which was the year that the Carnegie began operations. And in that year, the trustees, meeting for the first time, raised a specific question, which they discussed throughout the balance of the year in a very learned fashion. And the question is there any means known more effective than war, assuming you wish to alter the life of an entire people? And they conclude that no more effective means than war to that end is known to humanity. And finally, of course, we are, the war is over. At that time, their interest shifts over to preventing what they call a reversion of life in the United States to what it was prior to 1914, when World War I broke out. And they arrive at that point, they come to the conclusion that to prevent a reversion, we must control education in the United States. And they realize that that's a pretty big task. So to them, it is too big for them alone, so they approach the Rockefeller Foundation with the suggestion that that portion of education which could be considered domestic be handled by the Rockefeller Foundation, and that portion which is international should be handled by the endowment. And they then decide that the key to the success of these two operations lay in an alteration in the teaching of American history.
Alice Bailey stated in Externalization of the Hierarchy, educators and psychologists of vision in every country must be mobilized, and the pattern of things to come for the children must be intelligently determined. This will have to be done on an international scale, and with the wisdom which comes from a grasp of intermediate need and a far-sighted vision. Ladies and gentlemen, Lucius Trust is no fringe group. Anyone who has studied the New World Order realizes the power that is held by men such as John D. Rockefeller, Henry Kissinger, and through organizations such as the Council on Foreign Relations. These men are heavily involved with and have set up in many occasions these tax-exempt foundations which undermine the national sovereignty of many nations and draw us closer to a one-world religion enforced by a one-world government.
Now this is from Alice Bailey. She wrote The Externalization of the Hierarchy, and she was head of Lucius Trust. And Lucius Trust, as so many of you already know, is a publishing company. Lucius Publishing is a publishing company for the United Nations. And it was originally known as Lucifer Publishing and Lucifer Trust. And Alice Bailey created 140 New Age religions, and she worked for the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare in 1957, establishing educational goals that are now being implemented in the United States. For instance, Global 2000. And she writes that Freemasonry will be the universal religion. Other New Age leaders like Benjamin Krim also say the same thing, that Freemasonry will be the new universal religion. And she says that between the church and esoteric groups and Freemasonry, there is no disassociation between all of these. So if you're a member of a group like Freemasonry, they want you to work towards this goal of one world government and the New Age that they call the Great Plan. And Alice Bailey tells us how they're going to do this. She says, by means of the educational work of the world, the Great Lord, who she refers to in this book as Lucifer, seeks to reach those of the intelligent public who cannot be reached by means of ceremonial and symbolism as in Masonry, or by religious means and rituals as in the church. It touches the masses and those in whom the intelligent aspects predominate. What she's telling us here is, and we'll read it again in this next one, is the three main channels through which the preparation for the New Age is going on might be regarded as the church, the Masonic fraternity, and the educational field. We're going to get them in the churches to bring in this New Age. But not everybody goes to church. So we'll teach them in the fraternities. But not everybody goes to a Masonic lodge. So then the safety net for it all is education. We're in a period of what is called externalization of the hierarchy. They're taking what was done in secret 100 years ago and they're externalizing what was done by the hierarchy in secret into society.
As we have already seen, the conspiracy is spiritual in nature. Probably the most important book written by Alice Bailey was Externalization of the Hierarchy. This book details the setting up of a New World Order. But this is not the New World Order that many in the Truth Movement are aware of. Instead, it is a New World Order that will rise out of the ashes of the old world order. The old ways will be done away with in the new world order. Evil in Bailey's writings is associated with having, quote, a nationalistic, separative, or isolationist spirit, unquote. When one compares the new world order envisioned by Lucius Trust and the United Nations and compares it with the Venus Project, the similarities are unmistakable. The Venus Project, with its ties to the United Nations, has put forward through the Zeitgeist films the utopian dream of the elite. This has been envisioned at least since the time of Plato and was described by people such as the Rosicrucian Sir Francis Bacon. The dream of the elite is to recreate Atlantis. Alice Bailey stated in The Externalization of the Hierarchy, if this work is soundly done, then a world unity can be established which will produce right human relations, a sound world politic, a united spiritual effort, and an economic sharing which will bring to an end all competition and the present uneven distribution of the necessities of life. In the future, the contributory factor in life must be emphasized and developed, and the good of the entire family of nations must be substituted for the good of one nation or a group of nations. The resources of the entire planet must be shared collectively, and it must be increasingly realized that the products of the earth, the gifts of the soil, the intellectual heritage of the nations belong to the whole of mankind and to no one nation exclusively. Speaking in America's Assignment with Destiny, Manly P. Hall stated the following: this vision must be communicated. It must be extended throughout human society until humanity redeems itself by the experience of enlightenment.
And here's from another Freemason, high-ranking, Foster Bailey, and he says, little as it may be realized by the unthinking Mason who is interested only in the outer aspects of the craftwork, the whole fabric of Masonry may be regarded as an externalization of that inner spiritual group whose members down the ages have been custodians of the plan, and as those to whom has been committed the working out of the will of God for the race of men. They assist at the unfolding of the consciousness of the candidate until the time comes when he can enter into light and in his turn become a light bearer, one of the Illuminati who can assist the Lodge on high in bringing humanity to light.
The hierarchy is also being externalized through media giants such as Oprah.
That what I believe is that Jesus came to show us Christ consciousness.
Alice Bailey stated the following: humanity has been brought in consciousness increasingly nearer to the spiritual centers of love and life, and has been stimulated to make spiritual progress, to awaken to the light within, to unfold the Christ consciousness, and to find the path of light which leads to divinity.
The inspiration came out of that brilliant record that she wrote, Born This Way. And what's actually happening, as you saw the vessel, is that she's incubating. And it was necessary to incubate her for a certain amount of time because tonight she's actually birthing a new race. We're birthing a new race that doesn't have the ability to hate or judgment in their DNA. So she's actually incubating right now. So she goes through that process. And it's really happening. We're birthing a new race tonight.
She is the biggest pop star in the world. Her latest song that you heard her fans, her little monsters singing down there, Born This Way, already topping the Billboard charts. Lady Gaga had everyone talking at the Grammys, where she took home another 3 trophies on Sunday. And she is here this morning to talk about a lot of things, but also about the work that she is doing all around the world to help so many others. Take a look. What do you think it is about your music, about this? And I know we have to wait until the full album to come out in the latter part of May, but what is it about it, do you think?
You know, Born This Way is so much bigger than me. It's not about me at all, really. The song, when I wrote it, I just knew it was destined to reach so many people all over the world. And you know, because I wanted to have a rebirth, and I think the universe needs to have a rebirth.
Alice Bailey stated the following: in the externalization of the hierarchy, the slow and careful formation of the new group of world servers is indicative of the crisis they are overseeing or ushering in the new age, and are present at the birth pangs of the new civilization, and the coming into manifestation of a new race, a new culture, and a new world outlook. Later in the book, she goes on to say that I tell you that humanity is everywhere spiritually minded, and that the new race, the coming civilization, and the new age culture will be found throughout the world, the universal inheritance of the human race. She also stated that the present world order, which is today largely disorder, can be so modified and changed that the new world and the new race of men can gradually come into being. While many believe that the new world order is just about a police state, the fact remains that they are planning for the coming chaos. The most important item in the agenda for the new world order is unity through the new world's spirituality.
These are times of tumultuous change. The 20th century order is history, and the forces of globalization are pushing all of the economies of the world more closely together, and all of the citizens of the world more closely together, with their great diversity of religious faiths. Global interdependence, therefore, is a reality, and faith is inextricably linked to that interdependence.
The new global order brings new uncertainties and new insecurities too. And that has happened most recently in the form of financial turbulence and credit problems, whose origins are clearly international, but whose full implications are still unfolding.
And when I said the words New World Order, they turned a couple of heads. A little shocking. It's a reminiscence of scary George Bush days.
Many liberal organizations, including the United Nations, are pursuing the development of a one-world religious organization. Today, on the United Nations 55th anniversary, CBN News reporter Wendy Griffith takes a look at what's behind this push for a global religious voice.
After a while, the drums, chants, and prayers representing many of the world's leading religions all started to sound alike, somehow losing their flavor in a melting pot of spiritual soup. The first ever Millennium World Peace Summit of religious and spiritual leaders took place at the United Nations in August, and some believe it marked the first major step toward a movement to usher in a global spiritual body that may one day speak for all religions. Robert McGinnis with the Family Research Council says it appears the hidden agenda is to unite people under one religious organization so they will peacefully accept UN goals such as population control, abortion rights, and one world government.
Instead of all these different gods, maybe there's one God who manifests himself and revealed himself in different ways to different people. You know, what about that, huh?
CNN founder and billionaire Ted Turner was the honorary chair of the World Religion Summit. Turner, known for his critical views on biblical Christianity, promoted the New Age concept that there are many ways to heaven.
The thing that disturbed me is that my religious Christian sect was very intolerant, not intolerant of religious freedom for other people, but they thought that we were the only ones going to heaven.
Supporters of a global religious voice have come down hard on evangelical Christians who refuse to adopt their New Age agenda.
Although the URI says it is not a religion, critics say it does preach a theology that teaches acceptance and diversity among all faiths. Those who push for a global religious organization believe that all religions, while different on the surface, are each valid pathways to God.
Oh, you're going to be united. There's no doubt about that. I'm suggesting to you that the things that are suggested in Zeitgeist is just a ghost of what's coming. It's only the beginnings of a mindset that can only be possible after a huge amount of turmoil. The chaos that's going to ensue is going to be on such a level as to be able to bring in a vastly different system, one that will be a hyper-socialistic state that nobody will disagree with. How can that happen? How can that happen? It doesn't matter if the war was absolutely brutal. How can that happen? When the new world order comes, you will think it is a good idea. You will not believe that it is what you've been fighting. You think that we are a small group of people that know about the New World Order. That's not true.
we are a large group. The mainstream does believe what the mainstream is told to believe, and that is even more dangerous because they will be introduced to this new paradigm, which is going to be oddly similar to the vast majority of the paradigm of the truth movement. They're going to believe that aliens seeded us by genetic engineering. They're going to believe in a utopia based on the idea that we are nothing more than the products of genetic engineering from an alien race. There may be a religious dogma associated with it, but I will tell you this, there will be unity. We will all be united in our new understanding of our origins. We will willingly do what the New World Order has been trying to do the whole time, which is get rid of our borders, national sovereignty. Those things are just holding us back. We will be united in our hatred against Christians because, after all, they were wrong. They are the problem. They are the ones holding us back. They are the ones who all these wars and all this turmoil is because of. Let me ask you something. What if I could tell you that general idea has been provided for you and none of it's true?
They have not only instigated the coming chaos, they have planned for its aftermath, and they plan to use you to rebel. They plan to use this world revolution to unite all peoples. Alice Bailey stated steps towards a new world order. For step 1, she stated the following: the new world order must meet the immediate need and not be an attempt to satisfy some distant, idealistic vision. In point 2, she states, the new world order must be appropriate to a world which has passed through a destructive crisis and to humanity which is badly shattered by the experience. The new world order must lay the foundation for a future world order, which will be possible only after a time of recovery, of reconstruction, and of rebuilding. The Bible predicts a man will come before Jesus' second coming, claiming to be God. This man is the prophesied Antichrist, the Christ of the New Age. But first, through the externalization of the hierarchy, they are preparing humanity to worship this man.
We've been told by Satanists what to believe about Jesus. Does anybody see anything wrong with that? And the only thing that can stop them is the authority that I believe was given to us 2,000 years ago. Now, if that's true, then the New World Order, if they are the Satanists, has every reason in the world to discredit Jesus.
But faced with all this, what should one do? If the battle is spiritual, then we must have victory spiritually. There is only one way we can have victory.